I'd like to call the Board of Public Works meeting of July 27th, 2016 to order. Ask if anybody is taping this other than LCAT.
Shirley Tancredi for the minutes.
Thank you. First is to review and approve the minutes of the meeting of May 17th, 2016.
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
He can't.
Oh, wait, you
I
weren't
wasn't
there.
there.
That's right. I'll second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now to approve the minutes of the July 6th, 2016 meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes from July 6th, 2016.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's out of the way. Next, we have the superintendent's report.
Today, I promise I will be pretty short. I really only have two categories of items. I want to give the board a couple of updates on some staff transitions over the last couple of weeks. Scott Hurkowski, who we thought might be moving on and taking an opportunity with the Northampton VA, did take that opportunity, and he had his last day of work the middle of last week. We were fortunate that we had a candidate for that position already lined up from when we'd gone through the interview process. So we have a gentleman named Enrique Rosado who lives in town. He's currently working for the Granby DPW. He's been with them for about a year, came very highly recommended by the town of Granby. They're sad to see him go, but he'll be starting with us on August 1st. So he'll be stepping in the position that Scott had been in. We did post, as we talked about before, the position of the Cross Connection Control Inspector, which was the position that Mark Langone had been in. We had one candidate internally that had the required training and certifications that applied for the position, and that was Daryl Keene. And as a result of that, Daryl was promoted to the position of Cross Connection Control Inspector. With Daryl's transition to that position, that then creates, because he was in the position of pump station operator, basically the number 2 pump station person, that creates an opening for a pumping station operator. We have posted that position internally, and we have a deadline of Friday for internal candidates to apply. And in the event that we have an internal candidate that meets the qualification requirements, that will then create an opening, most likely at a skilled worker opening, which would then be posting externally within the next couple of weeks. So the next item I did want to spend a little bit of time on was talking about the voluntary water restrictions that were put in place as of the beginning of this week. I've put together a couple of items for the board to look at to get a better understanding of the situation that we've been facing. First thing I did just want to note is to stress that the restrictions are voluntary restrictions, and that the restrictions of what we're asking our customers to do right now is to go to an odd-even watering schedule for lawn irrigation. And that would mean that if your street address is an odd street address, to water on the odd date, and if you're an even street address, to water on the even street date. The other thing we're asking our customers to hold off the time being on swimming pool refilling, if at all possible. And the goal is, we are looking to try to cut down our demand a bit in order to be able to get primarily our storage tank capacity back to where we feel it needs to be. The first thing I wanted to call attention to is the table that I handed out, and I didn't get a chance to be able to label the columns, but what this table indicates is June and July. The 4th column in after the date is the daily pumping volumes at the Chestnut pumping station. On occasion, we have, in the wintertime, for instance, we have days where we might go 1 or 2 days without pumping at Chestnut because our tank stays full enough that we don't have to refill it every day. So on occasion, you may see zeros in there, and that means it's a day where we're not pumping. Whenever you see a number in there, that's a day that we're actually pumping at the Chestnut pumping station.
And those are the gallons that we're putting in?
That's the gallons that we are putting into the system. Not all of those gallons go to the tank necessarily, because
Right.
some of them are being used as they're being pumped out of the station. The third numbered column across is an average over 3 days of the Chestnut numbers, and I do that because of the days when we have zero pumping. I try to simulate what the average pumping rate is out of Chestnut. So you can see that trend as you look at, beginning of June, we might have been averaging somewhere around 1.7 million gallons a day. As we got into the middle of June, we saw our pumping rates increasing into the 2 million gallon per day range. And then as we got into July, we were putting out, high 2s to over 3 million gallons a day every day from the Chestnut pumping station.
What's the last column?
The last column is an estimate of what our total water demand is, because the Chestnut Street pumping station only handles about 60% of the water that is used. And by taking a look at some of the statistical numbers, what I do is I take the Chestnut number and then add an additional 40% to that to estimate on a daily basis what we're actually consuming. So when you take a look at these numbers, we've gone from the beginning of June from somewhere that's estimated to be a little bit less than 3 million gallons per day to up over 4 to 5 million gallons per day. And really since the middle of June, being almost consistently at 4 million plus per day.
Looks like you had some that were almost 6 million.
They were getting fairly high, yeah. And what that means in the next chart kind of shows what effect that has on our water storage tank levels. Our tanks, and I need to correct one of the lines that I put on here, the line that you see that says high level pump off 103, that line should actually be up higher. So the way our pumps are set to operate at Chestnut Street Pumping Station is that when the tank level gets to 103, all the pumps shut off. It's a full tank essentially.
Yep.
The water level draws down to 91 because in order to maintain water quality, we want to turn the tank over, so we let the tank fill and drain and fill and drain and fill and drain, and that helps to keep the water quality in good shape. That cycle happens with one pump down to elevation 91. If one pump can't keep up with that and the water level drops down to 88 feet, then the second pump kicks on. And again, you go through the same fill and drain cycle. And typically what happens is the greatest demand occurs typically this time of year in the early morning hours when the lawn sprinklers come on. You can actually take a look, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, you can see pressures dropping exactly at 5 o'clock because of all the automated lawn sprinklers that come on at exactly 5 o'clock. And then at exactly 6 o'clock, you see another drop in the pressures because the same thing is happening. During the daytime, we get a little bit of recovery, but we get the main recovery at nighttime, and the tanks will tend to refill themselves overnight. The trend we had been seeing was that through most of June and most of July, we were filling and draining, not completely filling the tank, but staying at a level that we felt comfortable. But as we got to last weekend, you can see starting at 7:19, we were in a comfortable position with the tank levels at 95, but then it kept dropping. And it dropped down to in the mid-80s, and it stayed in the mid-80s. It never got above there for 3, 4, 5 days in a row. And then on Monday morning, we saw that the level dropped even further. So we were trending in the wrong direction. Instead of getting to a point where we might be able to recover from a low tank level, we were getting lower and lower. And to put that low tank level in context, as I understand, when we had the fire at Bluebird Acres probably 10 years ago, which was probably the biggest fire event that we've had here in many, many years, that was the last time that we've seen tank levels drop down to that level. Given that that was a time of year where we weren't in a drought condition, fortunately the tank levels were able to recover fairly quickly. This time of year, however, with the very heavy consumption that we have, we were getting down to the 81 level, and without some modifications in water usage, we were very concerned that we wouldn't trend upward, we'd continue to trend downward. And then out of a precautionary note, we put out the voluntary water use restrictions, and I'm glad to report that we're seeing recovery, and you can see that in the last couple of points in this graph, that our tank levels are getting back to where we feel more comfortable with where they are.
And the third pump is off now?
And the third pump never got on, but it was right there.
Oh, all right.
It was within an inch or two, and that.
If that pump goes on, the pipes have the capacity and the pressure isn't exceeded, or?
The system has the capacity, but the third pump doesn't actually add much flow because of it's a centrifugal pump where when you don't double the capacity every time you put another pump on it. You get less and less output from every pump that you put on. So that third pump would come on and it might add a couple of 100 gallons per minute. It's not there to add capacity, it's there as redundancy. So that if we had a failure of one of the two pumps, we could immediately replace that capacity.
And we rotate, like pump one, then
Yes, we
pump
do,
two,
yeah.
then pump three, then
Correct.
pump one, then...
Right. So we're keeping everything balanced so we don't wear out one particular pump.
Refresh my memory, the old tank is still in play at 1 million gallons,
The old tank is 1.5 million,
and the new one is,
2 million gallons.
so our total capacity is 3.5 million if they were full.
That's correct.
And when you measure just so I know,
Sure.
when you measure the 91s and the 85s, you're measuring the new tank. What's happening at the old tank?
They both float
Or
up
do
and
they-
down together.
So they flow to a barometric reader or some kind of hydrometric reader that you can see these levels? Or
Yeah, there's a pressure sensor in the tank, and because the tanks are both connected in parallel.
are they the same height?
Yes, they are.
Oh, so that's what makes it
Right.
kind of flow together?
Right, so they rise and fall together.
Oh, all right.
There's some minor hydraulic differences, so sometimes one tank is a little higher than the other one during a dynamic condition, but they essentially rise and fall together.
Oh, all right. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, we were at a point on Monday morning where we were trending in the wrong direction, and without
Right.
some changes, we could have ended up in a situation that would have been not a very good situation.
I
And
thought the messages were perfect. I mean, I'm assuming, the average compliant individual is gonna go, I get it,
Yeah.
so. Especially the way it was put out. It was very polite, it was
Well,
very,
plus they know the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 8 days of over 90 degrees, so.
some people, I'm assuming, might even give up on the sprinklers because it's not even hardly working sometimes.
Right. I think a part of what we saw on the weekend is weekends, some people tend to be home, they're looking outside, they put the lawn sprinklers on, and they run them 24/7 at that point, and it isn't doing much for the grass, unfortunately, but it is using more and more water over that weekend period. To put the consumption in perspective, in the wintertime, in December, we might be around 1 million to 1.25 million gallons per day of usage. We're 4 to 5 times that right now.
And how does this year-to-date, and we must be way ahead of
We-
an average
yeah.
year?
As of the end of June, and that was the latest readings that I had from Springfield Water and Sewer Commission, we were tracking just about where we were last year, because we had a pretty high consumption year last year. We started off actually lower than last year at the beginning of this year, and then we caught up, and I'm certain that we're beyond where we were last year. But that was a situation, we didn't want to have to do it, but we felt at that point it was better to be cautious and get the word out, and people are cooperating. So I'm optimistic that if the weather conditions get a little bit better, it cools off a little bit, we get some rainfall, it'll be a matter of time before we can get the word out. One, thanking people for the assistance, and then removing the voluntary restrictions, hopefully for the remainder of the season, but no guarantee. If this weather pattern doesn't change and we don't get any significant rainfall, the trend we're seeing isn't going to change dramatically.
And remind me, just how much household water per person we can consume. Is this also affecting how good or bad we look on that kind of, how many gallons per, isn't there something in the water usage going forward about so many gallons per household? Or-
We report that information, but we're not judged on that information. It has to do with where we receive our water from, which is from Springfield Water and Sewer Commission from the Cobble Mountain Reservoir. And Cobble Mountain Reservoir, because of when it was permitted, is essentially grandfathered a certain volume per day. If Springfield had to increase that grandfathered volume, then we and they and everybody served from Springfield would be subject to that restriction, because they would have to receive a new permit. And their water consumption is generally down. A lot of the big water users have gone away at this point, so they're comfortably below their grandfathered volume and have been for some time.
Okay.
But if that was to change, or if the town came in today and we had the ability to put in a well of our own, for instance, we would then be subject to those restrictions that would require water conservation plans, maximum usage per capita, and things like
Do
that.
you remember like 10 years ago, we were talking about that because
Yeah.
it was becoming an issue or
Yeah.
something, right?
But like you said, I think we were just looking at numbers just so we could see going forward, if people are conserving or if it's going up.
Yeah, there was a move by the state at one point to try to pull all water suppliers into that regulatory program.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
And there was
about.
actually court action that resulted in the state backing off and being directed that they really only had jurisdiction over the permitted withdrawals and not the grandfathered withdrawals.
I do remember, I mean, we had a few meetings talking about how are we gonna get people to put in conservative toilets and other methods to try and get us down.
Right. You know, the good thing is we generally look okay relative to that statistic. Obviously, our numbers are going to be up this year.
That's what I'm
because
thinking,
Our
yeah.
customers are using an awful lot of water right now.
But so isn't everybody's.
That's correct.
Okay.
So we're keeping an eye on it day by day. As I said, over this weekend, we were hoping for an upturn, and when we didn't see an upturn and we saw a pretty significant downturn, it was time to react.
What is the center, even or odd? Because we might not want to have that on every day.
Yep. We have, what we did to somewhat compensate from the town standpoint is we did a complete shutdown on several of our larger locations, and some of our locations that are the more critical locations, like the high school lacrosse field that we just reseeded this year, we've kept that on, but where we could completely shut down. So I think we're more than 50% below what we had been using by shutting down where we could and keeping some locations on.
Okay.
And that's all I had today.
Awesome. And your other job is okay?
My other job is okay.
You're
Yes.
able to do both at the same time concurrently?
I had 3 meetings in 2 days. One last night, one tonight,
That's
and I'm
what I'm
going to the
wondering.
library trustees meeting after this as well.
All right. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
It's fun.
Next is the building facilities manager's report.
I have a couple kind of
nice.
spreadsheets just to share with you guys. The first is our annual inspections. We've completed all our annual inspections as far as this year. And comparing to last year's annual inspections, we're tracking or trending kind of the same. I haven't received all bills, but we've done some shuffling around, like Otis Elevator. I've currently went out to bid again this year to get some new pricing from Excel Elevator and Bay State Elevator, who was servicing our elevators in the past. So we've saved roughly about $2,000 by switching back to Bay State Elevators. And some of the other vendors that we do use. Some of them went up, some of them went down, but we're tracking roughly the same. So as you can see on the top column, that's our kind of our inspections, our projects are below. But we've expended last year about $85,931. And as of right now, we're at about $75,972. I don't believe that we're going to exceed the $85,000. I think we have maybe a few outstanding bills, but I will keep the board informed on what our final expenditures are for the annual inspections. But they have gone well, and we're all ready for actually heating season already. We've got our boilers cleaned and everything's been taken care of. Any questions?
Good.
Our current energy efficiency projects at Mountain View and Meadowbrook School. All interior lighting has been completed at Mountain View School. They are working to complete the outside of the exterior lighting this week, which will complete that school. Meadowbrook School, they're running a little behind because of some material or back order issues, but they're about 50% done at that facility. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I believe around August 8th, they should be completing Meadowbrook School. I know they're supposed to be done by August 1st, but like I said, they've had some issue with their supplier. So those projects will be wrapping up in the next couple of weeks. On another note, just a brief update as far as John Street water main project. The water main is in and pressurized and tested. The guys finished that this week. We got the final coliform tests and everything else that go along with that. We're going to be doing a big tie-in tomorrow at Village Green. We got to set up a couple of temporary services while that project's going on. But the project's going well, and the next thing we got to do is start doing the services. I believe we have about 4 that have been completed, but need to get the tie-ins done to complete those services. So we'll continue on that job also.
We have been starting some of the base paving work there as well,
Oh,
because the
yes.
residents have put up with a torn-up street for a long time at this
Yeah.
point, so we're...
Very dusty over there, very dusty, so like Bob said, we've been paving along there also. On another note too, we did receive our mower. It's out in the field as of today, working great, air conditioning, so the guys are loving the cab and everything else. So it's a good relief to have that piece of equipment on the road. Playscapes for Mountain View and Meadowbrook School. I was on vacation the last couple of weeks, but Roy and crew have stepped up and demolished all the existing playscapes and excavated those sites down to their 12-inch in depth. So the vendor will be starting next week on August 1st. They were supposed to start this week on July 25th, but they had some scheduling issues. So that project is slated to start next week.
Done before school, or?
Yes, I believe the contract deadline is August 20th, so the vendor assured me that it will be completed by then. On another note, I have completed our preventative maintenance cost with our 3 local vendors. You can see on the giant spreadsheet you have in front of you. They're from Napa, Fleet Pride, and Palmer Trailer Service. The costs are pretty significant as far as last year. They're trending about the same. If you look at the bottom number on total PMs on each of your sheets, you can see that Napa came in at $28,278.51. Fleet Pride came in at $28,327.45. So you can see we were using Fleet Pride last year, but they only lost it by a couple $100. The next one was Palmer Trailer Supply, which came in at $29,361. The other items below that are just miscellaneous fluids and everything else that we use, and inspection stickers. Keep in mind too, compared to last year, which was $28,052, that we've added 2 new vehicles to this list too, as far as 77 and 78. So the prices are staying pretty consistent. On another note also, I did finally get a hold of Mike Cincinnati, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
The sandblasting person that's doing a couple of our trucks this year. We're going to be doing trucks 71 and 72. Yeah, we're going to try to get 2 done. He's quite busy, so at the end of next week, we're going to be dropping off one of those 2 trucks. I'm not sure which yet, but to get those sandblasting coated to get a little more longevity out of those trucks, because they're starting to get rusty again, so keep our investments looking well.
What's our capacity for body work?
We really don't have really good capacity for body work. We don't have the ventilation, the painting booths and all that stuff. I mean, patching and just spray painting here and there, that's about it. But as far as total, a paint shop and everything else and the ventilation, we do not have.
Not tomorrow, but I wouldn't mind us mapping out whether we could actually set something up. Paint booths aren't ridiculously expensive.
Right.
And the only reason I say that is it's kind of the Disney principle. Once we get a dent, then we get 2 dents, then we get 4 dents, then before you know it, there's a bunch of dents in the trucks.
Mm-hmm. It's keeping on top of them too as they do occur is actually.
If the trucks don't have any dents and they come back to the yard and there's a dent, it's a lot more. I mean, I could take half of our trucks maybe, take it and dent it, take it personally tonight, dent it, bring it back, and nobody would know the difference.
Right.
Because
Right.
tailgates are bumped in, bumpers are bumped in, quarter panels are bumped in, door jambs are jarred.
I wouldn't know it.
And so it'd have to be your truck that you memorize what it looks like to even know. So
Yeah.
I just put it out there that a future project could be,
Yeah.
where could we set up, a little body area, and do we have a foresight to grab a skilled laborer coming in that might have body work experience in the past.
Yeah.
Not that he would do it every day.
Right.
You know, he might have to be out doing lawns and things right now, but in some period of time during the year, is there a shot at?
Well, Steve Moore does that stuff kind of on the side. He's a body man
Yeah.
and paint man, so he does have the expertise to do it, but we don't have obviously the equipment to do it.
Yeah, so just it's not an emergency thing, but I mean, I see different color yellows and,
Yeah.
you know, stuff where I think we could probably take it up a notch. If we could get the funding and if we could get the people. I'm not saying we're ready to do it. It's just,
Sure, absolutely. Another note, we did, between IT and Steve and our electrician, we did complete the camera installation over at Heritage Park, so that is online as of today. So I'm sure Ryan's going to be sharing that with us for monitoring purposes and the police station, if they choose to do so.
And I know that the new chief did, express a desire to really get onto Heritage more and do more monitoring of cameras, so Jeff was looking forward to it.
Good.
awesome.
On a field note, just because of obviously the dry and drought conditions that we are having, mainly we are cutting only the irrigation areas that throughout the town. So we've kind of stepped back. We're doing some grooming of some of our ball fields that haven't been used recently, re-edging, taking out the grass in certain areas and just fluffing those up and getting those ready while we have time. And also we are starting to prepare for our fall sports as far as football, soccer, and everything else, because double sessions start sooner than later. I believe in about 2 to 3 weeks those will be starting up at the school. So kind of getting ahead of the game in some areas. So everything's looking good. That's all I have for you.
All right, town engineer, Dan.
Very good. Got a few things tonight.
Everybody's grass is going to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
First one's Winterberry Lane. As you recall, we were very close to recommending acceptance, but there's a private stormwater infiltration system there. So one of the residents wanted us to make sure we got it inspected before recommending acceptance of the street, and that happened. Gary was out there on July 13th and 14th and actually installed inspection ports and took a look inside. Everything looked great. I mean, the material was clean as clean gravel. There's obviously no water in the fields and the filtration system. So that was done on the 13th and 14th. So as far as I can see, I think everything's closed out on the job. All the trees are in. We're happy with the paving and everything's complete. So definitely recommend that you make a recommendation to accept the street.
Now that goes to town council.
That would go to town council and could be acted upon at any of their regular meetings. I think procedurally, the process would still be that the Board of Public Works would make a recommendation and the council would take that under consideration and vote on acceptance.
So we're ready if he's
Yep,
ready.
ready for motion? Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the street as described.
All right,
I
so-
second the motion.
all right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Winterberry Lane, is it?
Yes.
Winterberry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. An update on the landfill. We did have a visit from DEP a week ago today, and Charlie Clients came out. He had been off and started back up for the fiscal year last week, and he was very happy with the progress. He says it's been a long time. He's thinking about the landfill for a long time. He's very happy with everything that's been done. He was actually, pretty. I think he didn't expect to see as much work done as has been done. It's a little dusty, but it's actually the fire department is helping us a little bit with the dust. They came out and they sprayed the hose the last busy day we had out there in the last week. Charlie, and then the only thing I'd note is that Adams Mountain is shrinking. I don't know if you've had a chance to go look. It's amazing how much material's been moved. So right now we've got the 2 piles of vegetative support material. I just got test results. They just came in this afternoon. Looks like we're going to hit the 8% just fine. So we're in good shape. Charlie's happy. There's a little tiny area we need to just scuff and make sure we've got a couple, maybe add, just a few 50 square feet, 100 square feet we may add to it. But other than that, everything will look great. So
if you get a chance to get out there, you'll see a lot of areas starting to open up. One of the major windrows of compost material has now
Yep.
been screened,
Yep.
blended with topsoil, so that's gone away. Another probably portion of windrows now been screened and blended as well. So a lot of the piles you might have seen over the past couple of years are starting to go away as planned.
Take a look, take a ride around, you won't even recognize the place.
So we'll have a lot more surface area that we'll be able to use,
No, I can't.
We
can't do nothing on it?
We would, to go beyond what we have put on the table right now, which is really the area in front, we would have to go back to the state and get what they call post-closure modification approved. It doesn't mean you couldn't do it, but we would have to go back to them. They would require any areas that we work on top of, we would have to put in the same gravel pad and hardened surface that we have in other locations, because they want to make certain that the landfill underneath is protected. So at the moment, the plan is any areas that we close get loamed and seeded, but they certainly would be available in the future if we needed to with approval and some additional work to be used if needed.
The other thing it's done is this space between what we're currently using and the landfill that's actually considered capped, so we could expand into those areas up to the edge. Particularly on phase 2, there's a big piece of real estate that would be pretty useful, I think, once in between what we're going to cap and where we've got the actual pads now. So I think particularly 2 is definitely a good opportunity to get some more space.
Are we
Another-
gonna mow it when we're done, or are we just gonna let
That
it
was
go
my
natural?
question.
It's annual mowing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hay it?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it has to be green and you keep all the trees down, keep all the, the brushy
Yeah.
growth down.
Otherwise,
So
4 or 5 years.
another out there question. So in that relatively large area, inexpensive metal building, put trucks inside in the winter or put extra trucks inside?
There's enough room, I think, in front of phase 2, you could conceivably do that.
Yeah, the concern always is in any type of building activity on top of landfilled areas, you could end up
It's
with
true.
similar situations. One is we've seen at the fire station that things tend to move with time. Obviously, metal building's a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah,
for-
something, a
for foundation
relatively
settlement.
inexpensive Olympia
Yeah.
steel type,
Yeah,
do the posts, to the extent they would allow us, or a pad to the extent we can do it, and
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky, a little bit of a can of worms, just in my experience, anytime. I mean, the area that we have now is still, it's capped, but I know that if we wanted to put anything in, more than a couple feet, or even just.
on top,
On
not even
top.
on top.
Yeah, it's not like this, it's not really a gas issue out there, but we'd have to, they'd be wary a little bit.
I'm more thinking just to, you see in the yard, stuff just sitting out there rotting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you have to give it some time to.
The steel plate
settle it.
trailer, the
Yeah.
stuff we don't use all the time, could it be just a metal storage shed? Just to keep it out of the three-sided, or, so it's just a thought. It's
Yeah.
not tomorrow, again, not tomorrow, but,
Anything we can do is, we're not, going into the ground deep.
yeah.
I mean, even on a gravel stone, when it's in a building,
Yeah.
the trucks would last.
Yep.
Yeah, the concern
lot
is
longer.
that
Leaking.
any methane release that you have, anytime you build a structure, that structure tends to contain the methane and then becomes a risk issue. So part of the
Ridge vent it and,
Yeah, it's, even structures like manholes, catch basins, things like that become a real, in DEP's eyes, become a real risk because they tend to trap methane and become a health and safety issue if a spark ignites anything. So they would require most likely at
monitoring, we'd have to
Well,
have monitoring.
at minimum, probably a higher level of capping, because we have really essentially the minimal level of capping now, which is 2 feet of low permeability dirt, because the risk that is posed right now is relatively low. If we start having buildings on top of the landfill and actively using it for more than outdoor storage, then the risk classification increases and the need to
You'd probably.
prevent there being a problem increases as well. So it could drive us to a higher level of capping, higher level of protection.
So I'm sure they don't want anything with hydraulic or fluid
Right.
on there.
Yeah.
It could leak into the,
Even, an example would be if you wanted to construct playing fields on top of that, which it's not large enough, so it won't go there here, but that then risks, DEP would come back and say you need a much higher level capping because of potential contact between people and the landfill. So as you do more and more with it, it doesn't mean you can't do it, but then you're requiring more money to be spent to get the property ready to be used.
Wilbraham did that 20 years ago, and the DEP still hasn't let them play on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not talking play on it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, now third thing, I was just gonna, Chestnut and Shaker.
Sure.
I did, this is just a draft of the Chestnut Shaker intersection. We're looking at the lane additions over there. Just started looking at it and put this draft plan together. Actually, VHB's coming out tomorrow. We're gonna talk about, control upgrades, but this is basically, it'd be 2 additional turning lanes. One, as you can see, at the bottom of Chestnut Hill to take a left to go south on Shaker. And the other one would be a right turn lane right by the new gas station, which I've actually sketched in. You can see up on the top left there. It looks like we'd have to change the curve on the south side of Shaker. You can see that red curve there on the northwest on the Shaker to Chestnut curve by the new gas station. It looks like we may be able to keep the curve right where it is and use some available space that's in the I guess the northbound lane on Shaker, steal a little bit of that and make room for the second lane. Again, we're going to talk to VHB out to take a look at it tomorrow,
Yeah.
and we'll go from there. But,
Right.
And the other thing I wanted to point out is going up the hill. I mentioned it last time. There's 2 poles that would have to be relocated, and we've reached out to Verizon and Grid to get that process rolling. That'd be the first step, and then we do have our fiber line along that south edge, and we're looking at what we'd have to do to maintain the integrity of that and maybe change out. There's a box down on the corner, and we need to improve. So that's it for that. I just figured I'd give you that to take a look at as an update. And if there's any questions, you can feel free to ask.
Aren't those lanes there now?
Yeah, the gray are the lanes that are there now.
Yep.
And then what I've done is just the new red with the red arrows would be the...
Just move it over a little bit more?
Just wiggling it around a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There isn't an official on Shaker Road heading southbound. There's not an official right-hand turn lane there, but
Yeah.
many people use it, will squeeze by, particularly if it's smaller vehicles. This will make it a little bit more width and make it easier and more defined in terms of having a right-hand turn lane.
Which would keep that traffic moving a little easier.
Correct, yeah. The key, I think, here is the left-hand turn lane coming down the hill, because right now, you're pinched right at the end. If somebody's taking a left-hand turn, you're stopped. All the traffic behind them is stopped, waiting for that left-hand turn
Yep.
to move.
Yep, I always go to the post office that way.
Okay, now the fourth thing is just, I guess, the road closeout. We basically, the roads project's done. I'm waiting just to get all the final, make sure we've got all the final bills on the details. And once we have those numbers in here, we'll make a decision on whether or not to move forward on Pease Road. And obviously, we're setting aside money for the fall crack sealing project.
Yeah, Pease Road, just to refresh your memory, is that we're looking at the bottom of the Pease Road hill between Lee and
It's an old farm.
Old Farms. There's a particular couple hundred feet that's in particularly bad shape that we're hoping to go out there and do some select milling and overlay work there to
Dip right there.
Be
to take care
single
of that.
lane like we did on the other end
Yeah.
last fall. And then just the last thing, I'll give you a quick update on Elm Street sidewalk. And I haven't shared with Bobby, but I've laid out a preliminary, kind of a first cut layout. It looks like there's either poles in the way or we're gonna have to with that property issue. So we're going through that. We're gonna come up with something, we'll have an update for you the next meeting. Should have a layout for you to look at.
VHB. The
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Yep.
That's the second beach.
The pavement management.
Yep.
And I did send a copy of this plan out, I believe, to board members to look at. It's very preliminary at this point. Dan's going through and really doing some QA/QC on it.
Yep, the one thing I'll jump right off today is our current project rules that we just done were not included on this because they were doing their survey right around the same time. So that's one update, and then this Black Dog Lane was the second one. So you can see on the map, the red and the orange are the worst conditions. This pavement condition index, I think it goes from red to blue is the best down in the bottom left. And I guess the two that jumped out at us, Bob, is Kibbe Road and Denslow would be the two kind of more main roads that are in the poorest condition. So again, we're just truth checking it, looking at some of the streets just to make sure that we agree with what they've got on there. But it's a great place to start. It'll certainly give us more information as we move forward.
and this is part of the plan, there's a report that will come along with this with costs, really helping us to do two things. One, take a look at existing Chapter 90 monies and where might we best spend it going forward, and then take a look at, and I think we talked about this at the last meeting, what our true needs might be to be able to keep the roads, or get them to a reasonable shape and keep them in a good shape. The other thing is it'll feed into strategies to, depending on the roadways, we may have different strategies for main roads versus side streets. For instance, a side street that's in poor condition, we may just do an overlay. And that will, be good for the next 20 years because it only receives a certain amount of traffic, whereas a major road in the same condition might require a more extensive reconstruction like we did on Elm Street. So not everywhere you see as red, for instance, will receive the same treatment. It's going to depend on the traffic volume and other factors to determine how do we address the deficiencies. If we had unlimited funds, we would rebuild every single road in town, but
That's not the case.
that's not the case.
That's it.
Generally, it seemed, Dan and I looked at it quickly, I haven't put my eyes on this recently,
Yeah.
but it generally seemed to make sense. It's, as if you're familiar with most of these streets in town.
Yeah, it does.
But it was good to get it all in one place and get it all in front of us, and then ultimately develop a plan that it'll be updated every year, but a plan that we can share with the residents and explain, we're not arbitrarily doing what we're doing. There's a plan in mind, and we're doing what we can afford to do on a yearly basis.
Looks good. Yep.
The other thing is that this plan is all computerized, GIS-based, so we'll have the ability going forward to keep it up to date and keep modifying it as we go forward. So it's not something that VHB kind of got us started, but then from this point going forward, it'll be something that we'll be maintaining ourselves.
We can do that in-house.
Yeah.
And you said this year's projects are not on here, right?
Yeah, the newest ones, like Allen.
Markham's,
Yeah, Markham's
so-
not on there, so they had gone out and started
Yep.
those roads just before.
Okay, so next one we get it will be
Yep, it'll be
updated.
updated.
And you'll notice the effect of some of the streets we've done crack sealing on, for instance. That crack sealing is a factor that they figure into their analysis of extending the street life. So relatively small investment, a couple of dollars per lineal foot, actually increases what's known as the pavement condition index, significantly,
yeah.
and extends the life of that. So if we hadn't done some of the crack sealing, some of these roads would be looking worse today than they currently do.
Yep.
All right, looks good.
It's going to be a valuable tool.
I just, it has, oh, that's okay, I'll take that. No, I got this one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, it has to be.
And that's all we have, I believe.
Okay. One thing, hate to bring it up again, how are we doing with streetlights?
Streetlights. I received a phone call last week from Joanne DeRose. They acknowledged that they had 14 lights that were not there. They've replaced them all. And she indicated that we need to talk about a billing adjustment to account for the fact that the lights were not there and we're being charged for them for an extended amount of time. So they've acknowledged the need to have the discussion. We haven't had the discussion yet, but they've owned up to the fact that there were lights that were on their inventory that were not physically in place. And how that happened, in some cases it may be that utility poles were replaced, and sometimes when they replace a pole, they don't immediately replace the street light.
Also,
Never.
the crack.
Yeah.
And I think at some point, we took some and moved them from one location to another. I think that we had a sort of a moratorium on streetlights, but we felt if there was a need and not need over here, instead of putting another one in, we'd take one from another area. So maybe they just never took it off there, and I don't know. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They're gonna give us some money back, so we'll be happy with that. But what about the fixing of them? Because I still see there's quite a few out as I
Yeah.
drive around. Do we need another list of them?
We
or-
may need, it's a continual process. So they have told us they have fixed everyone that we had on the list to them, but if there's, when there are new ones, we need to get that information back to them. So it may be you know, maybe something we want to consider doing maybe twice a year. We can't do it every month.
Let's
but-
reach out to Jeff. We got a new guy
Yeah,
here. Let's
good
reach
point.
out to Jeff. He used to work here.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll,
Yeah, it's public safety, it's streetlights, it's,
Yeah.
maybe he can get the second or third shift guys
Yeah.
in the winter to start paying attention.
that's
and
what
just-
that's
All
what
you
I
gotta do
asked
is
them.
radio it in, you know?
Right, they got the lights on the,
Yeah, they can,
so they can look at get the number off the pole.
maybe they will.
usually.
I mean, it'll help us.
And you can put the flashers on, so if he has to get out of the cruiser to walk across the street and
Yeah.
look at it, he can do it without getting
If they
killed.
do that, I would think anybody that comes in on standby, I mean, we can't ask them to do it off the clock, but there are a lot of guys that live in town, but I mean, I think at minimum, we'd have to ask our guys too, is, you know, you're out on your plow route, you're the foreman, you're seeing how the plowing's going, you see a street light out,
You can
you know,
Yep.
Report it.
get it into us so we can get it on the list and we can get them.
One thing that'll help, we don't have the final piece of this, but we now have a listing of every single street light with a street address assigned to every street light. So
Okay.
it's, you know, we
Be a
can
lot
give
easier.
that to the police department. Ultimately, National Grid has promised us that they will get us a GIS map with a dot on every street light. And then at that point, it's easier. Give everybody a map, and as you drive down the street, if that street light, just circle the dot. And
Well, we can put it in the computer too, right?
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
So
we,
they can-
yeah,
they can have it
Access
right on
it
their
there.
computer.
right, good point, yeah.
On the collector.
Yeah, right. And that's right, we could actually
That'd be
build a
great.
field where you just touch it and basically say on, off.
That one
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?
Only 'cause, just Harkness North Main Light, blinking red, yellow for a while.
We're seeing periodic, what we believe are power surge issues that creates some, even though there's a surge protector inside of the panel, creates some equipment damage. We've had to have the control. There's two primary pieces of equipment. There's a controller, and then there's something called the conflict monitor. And at various times, the two pieces have been damaged through these surges. We put our power monitor on Harkness for about a month and a half, no problems. We took it off. 2 weeks later, we had the issue that you saw. So we've put it back on there now. We're in the troubleshooting phase. If we can find out what's happening from a power standpoint, we can then go back to the utility company and have them investigate where is this surge coming from, but we haven't been able to catch it yet. So
We actually had it on there for 2 months.
2
And,
months.
Yeah, and because we're having so many problems with it, it was happening every other week, so, oh, let's put it on there, let's do it for a month. Then the program runs out after a month, and then the electrician put it in for another month, nothing happened. I said, well, maybe it was just a fluke thing, and then.
Of course, take it off.
As soon as you're not looking at it, right?
Yeah, so it's, yeah.
the other thing we're looking at doing on the advice, we actually have a different traffic company, the same company that did the coordination work on North Main Street, because it's a different type of controller. They're recommending what they've seen work well in some communities is, even though we have a surge protector, they've found that sometimes putting a UPS in line as well will give you a little bit more filtering of the power that will help to prevent some of these problems from happening. So we're looking at wiring a UPS there as well to try to protect the equipment. Because they can get expensive when they get the spikes and bang,
Oh,
they
yeah.
have to send it out to a shop.
I mean,
and-
UPS probably 1,000 or 2, and
Yeah,
it
actually
goes-
less than that, yeah.
it goes away.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
All right, scheduled next meeting, 2 weeks from tonight is the August 10th.
Tim?
Just checking, everybody's checking.
I'm in tough shape that whole week, so I'll be playing it by ear. I mean, we can, Tuesday night I can't, that I know, so
Monday I can't, so.
I'm pretty sure it's Tuesday.
You want to go for the 10th?
Yeah, I mean,
Because 10th's a Wednesday.
I might miss it.
10th?
Okay.
We'll shoot for it.
Okay. Next meeting will be August 10th, 5 o'clock at the service building. Motion to adjourn?
Do you want to?
Yep.
I just happened to see it in my calendar, so I'll mention it. I believe I'd mentioned a meeting or two ago, the school department had applied for funding from the state to do some additional testing of lead at fixtures and bubblers, et cetera, around
I've
all
seen
the
that
school
email,
buildings. The We did receive word, I think, a couple of days ago that the town is receiving that funding, so there's a kickoff meeting scheduled on August 15th with folks from state, from UMass Amherst, out of the water laboratories there, that are going to be conducting the testing to kick that whole process off and get through it and you know, work through the process. You know, it's intended to be a systematic testing, really, of all the locations in the school that are a potential risk, and making certain that if there are any issues, we identify where they are so we can get them taken care of.
Good. All right, motion to adjourn, all in favor?
So move. Aye.
Aye.